learners, I welcome you to this course on Education, Concept, Nature and Perspectives. The course code of this course is BESC 131. Before starting the lesson, I would like to introduce myself. I am Dr. Rajlakshmi Raina, Assistant Professor, Amity Institute of Behavioral and Allied Sciences, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh. Today we will be learning about education during medieval period. Before I start with the education during medieval period, I would just like to give the highlights of the ancient Indian education system which we have studied earlier. We have seen that the Vedic period was before 600 BC and the Buddhist period was 600 BC to 1200 BC, and during Vedic period more emphasis was on the Vedic literature, and also we saw that it was the Vedas, more emphasis was on the Vedas, the teachings from the Vedas. Vedic education thus consisted of different teachings which was given by Rig Ved, the Sam Ved, the Yajurved, and we have also seen the aims of education during Vedic education period was ultimate realization, self-realization, moksha. Character formation was mostly emphasized, education for worldliness was emphasized, and there was lot of vocational training which was given during the Vedic education period. We have also seen that there were different methods of teaching like Shravan, like Manan, Nidhi Dhyana. These were the three very important methods which were there during the Vedic education time, and the Shishya, he used to stay, he used to live in Gurukul, and there he used to serve his Guru, and at the same time he used to learn from his Guru. There was a very cordial relationship between the Guru and the Shishyas. We have also seen that during the women education, if we talk of the women education, that was also given emphasis during the ancient Vedic period. And we also studied in our previous video that Buddhist period, during the education during the Buddhist period, it was basically given from the Sanghas. We saw that Buddhism, it spread through monasteries and viharas, and it was only the monks, or we can say it was there were different types of initiation ceremonies which was there during the Buddhist period. Monks used to pass the religious knowledge to the learners, and most of the monks used to carry out the study of teachings of Buddha, the Dharma Shastra. We also saw that the Buddhist education had two stages, the primary stage and the secondary stage. Primary stage where it was very elementary, the reading, writing and arithmetic, and higher stage where we had religion, philosophy, logic, metaphysics, military training, etc. We have also seen that the Buddhists, they aim to answer to the old philosophical questions. So, we have studied about the aims of education during Vedic period, we studied about different methods. So, today we will be now moving forward and learning about the medieval period. After this session, you will be able to critically analyze the education system practiced during the medieval period. You will also be able to discuss the main aims of education during the Muslim rule, and you will be able to explain the methods of teaching which were emphasized during the medieval period. During the medieval period, the Muslim rulers established their empires in India. They introduced a new system of education. Subsequently, the ancient system of education was greatly changed. The aims of education during the Muslim period in India, they were multifarious, and they changed with the change in the rulers. As and when there was the next ruler used to come, he used to definitely do some or the other changes in the aims of the education. So, it was never same, there was always some or the other change, and this was done by the ruler who used to come. The entire education system, it was influenced by religious principles which shaped the aims and also the content of the study. Pupil acquired knowledge as a religious obligation. The Muslim education also aimed at the achievement of material prosperity. Like earlier we studied in the Vedic education, aim was the eternal truth, the moksha, but here it was the material prosperity. Education was being imparted to strengthen the political position of the rulers. So we can say it was because of this education they could get educated employees who could be running the administration, and who could be used politically. So this was one of the aims for strengthening the education system. Then education of this period, it also aimed at the propagation of Islamic values, Islamic laws and social conventions. The aim of education was to acquaint the students with the verses of Quran and Islamic culture. Dissemination and mastery over social and moral codes of conduct, they were the chief aims of education. The masses were informed about the Muslim laws, the shariats of the Holy Quran through Muslim education. There was a ceremony in the beginning when the child was introduced education, and this ceremony used to be called as Bismillah Khani. It means the child was introduced to education after invoking God. Admission to Maktabs was marked by a colorful ceremony called Bismillah. Initiation into religious studies commenced on the day when a Muslim boy would be 4 years, 4 months and 4 days old. So it was a particular day which was chosen when the education would begin. It was 4 years, 4 months and 4 days old. The child should be only this much age, then only he can start. During the Muslim period, there were basically 2 types of institutions. They were called as Maktabs and madarsas. Primary education was provided in Maktabs. These were elementary schools and they were definitely attached to the mosque. Or you can say they were run by some private individuals imparting Muslim education in the 3 R's: reading, writing and primary arithmetic. And the prayers were based on the Quran. The Maktabs attached to the mosque were perhaps the most permanent of Muslim educational institutions in India. Now, this was the primary education. The higher education was disseminated through madarsas. After completing the primary education, children were sent to madrasa to receive the higher education. Madarsas were seats of higher learning patronized by royal families. There were separate teachers for different subjects. Special emphasis was also given to religious education and secular subjects. During the Muslim period, there was provision of vocational, technical and professional education also. The individuals began to acquire education on the basis of their skills, on the basis of their abilities and on the basis of whatever interest they had. During this period, the individuals were engaged in a number of occupations. Like we can have silk weaving, carpentry or pottery making, dyeing, artworks, handicrafts, working with metals, precious stones, or we can say a production of garments, jewelry. So all these occupations, the individuals were engaged in according to whatever the interest was of that individual. The methods of teaching in the Muslim educational institutions were mostly recitation and cramming. Cramming and memorizing were practiced in educational institutions. In the Maktabs, Teaching primarily took place making use of oral methods and memorization of the assigned lessons. The Emperor Akbar encouraged writing and made an attempt to bring about reformation in the scripts. The education of the students began with the acquisition of alphabets, knowledge of alphabets, then acquiring about the word, and then again sentences. So it began with the alphabet, then he began to acquire word knowledge, and then he began to form different types of sentences. In educational institutions, the students and the teachers were meant to follow the rules and regulations, and definitely they had to maintain discipline. They were meant to obey the instructions which was given to them by their teachers, and teachers in turn also treated students with kindness and courtesy. The same how we have seen during the Vedic period. The teachers and the students had a very cordial relationship. The teachers and students were meant to work in collaboration, integrate together, work together. The education that was considered prominent was practical education. The students were not required to take any annual or half-yearly examination as far as the examination system was considered. They were usually tested from time to time on the basis of the practical situations of life. Apart from this, there was military training, there was artwork, handicrafts. These subject areas were also considered of utmost significance during the Muslim period. Now coming to women education, the women were usually discouraged from the acquisition of education. The women who belonged to wealthy and royal households were able to acquire education within their homes. But in Maktabs and madarsas, girls and women were also encouraged to obtain some education. In other words, spread of education among women began little to acquire some significance. The curriculum, if we talk of the curriculum during the Muslim time, curriculum at elementary stage was focused basically on reading, writing, arithmetic and religious education. In Maktabs, children were made to remember the ayats of Quran. After children had learnt the Arabic script, they were taught Persian language and script. The stories of prophets and Muslim fakir were also taught to the children. Children were also imparted the knowledge of art of writing letters and conversation. The system of oral education was mostly prevalent in the educational institution. So they used to listen to their guru, they used to listen to their teachers and then orally recite. At the higher education stage, the curriculum was broad and comprehensive. It was comprehensive enough to contain the religious education as well as the general education, or we can say general education in the sense non-religious. The religious education included the study of Quran, Muhammad Sahib and his conventions, Islamic laws and Islamic history. All this was considered in the religious education. And when we talk of the general education or the secular education, it included the study of Arabic literature, it included grammar, it included history, philosophy, mathematics, geography, politics, economics, we can say Greek language, astrology. So all this was there which was included in the general education. Medium of instruction, basically you can say Persian, which was the court language of Muslim kings. This was the most popular medium of instruction. The study of Arabic, the language of the Quran, was compulsory for Muslims. Women education was mostly ignored during the medieval period. They had parda system. This was present during the Islamic period. But during the Muslim period in India, education of girls received a great setback, particularly if we talk of the secondary level. Sometimes it was that young girls were taught in schools since they left school at an early age, so they could not continue their education up to higher level. So they used to have education only till the early age, the preliminary. The relationship between the teachers and the students, they were recognized through the implementation of the traits of courtesy, kindness, decorum. The teachers may give approval regarding something or may not give their approval. The students were required to obey and accept their decision. This was the relationship between the teacher and the students. Examination system, there was no provision for any annual examination of the modern type like how we have the education system. And evaluation was a built-in, or we can say it was a continuous process. Upgradations was based on assessment by the educators themselves. So they would upgrade according to the continuous assessment which they were doing. Degrees were awarded for specialized and in-depth study in various branches of learning. The most important of these degrees were Fazil, specialized in logic, Atim, specialized in theology, and Kabil, specialized in literature. In medieval India, the Islamic system of education, as discussed above, it conformed to the ideals and objectives of life as was laid out in the Quran, the religious scripture of the Muslims. Hence, we can say education was mostly religion oriented. Much stress was laid on the teachings of the principles of Islam through the study of the Holy Quran and also the propagation of Islam among the people of India. The education in the medieval India was predominantly based on Muslim system of education. The objective being focused upon the religious education, extension of knowledge and propagation of Islam. We can conclude that the characteristics of education, it was patronage of the rulers, absence of state control was there, significance of religion, significance of vocational education, following the norms of the rulers, the relationship between the teachers and students, they had individual attention was given by the teacher, the discipline, the teaching assistance. It can be understood that in medieval India, there were many changes and transformation that took place in the system of education. The education system, it was free from all restrictions. There was great respect for women and girls, but there were not any satisfactory provisions made to promote education among girls belonging to the community. Education was, we can say, limited to women, only belonging to some upper and wealthy families. The main purpose of these changes and transformation was to generate awareness among the individual in terms of the significance of education. Not only individuals belonging to wealthy communities, but all the individuals belonging to various categories and backgrounds should obtain access to education. Gradually, the system of education turned out to be more methodical, more systematic, and due to the introduction of policies and strategies. So learners, I think after going through this video, you will be able to answer these questions. You will be able to answer critically, you will be able to analyze the education system which was practiced during the medieval period. You will be able to discuss the main aim of education which was there during the Muslim period, and you will also be able to explain the methods of teaching during the medieval period. Thank you, learners.